faces. I think I am just overwhelmed not by the occasion of the matter, but the size of this crowd. I think we all have to do a big bow and a thank you to whatever powers brought us here today, because there's something moving in the culture, and there's something changing in these winds. And I'm not quite sure if it's an artistic question. I think that we're all just kind of fed up about a lot of things. And I think that artists have that unique responsibility to use that energy for something else. I'm tired of the destruction. I'm tired of the strife. I think we can do better.
My name is Valerie Cassel Oliver. I am the Sidney and Francis Lewis Family Curator of Modern and Contemporary Art at the Virginia Museum of Fine Arts.
My name is Dustin Klein. I'm a projectionist and lighting designer.
And my name is Criqui. I'm an artist, musician, and writer.
My name is Vasquez La Roche. I am a multidisciplinary artist from Trinidad and Tobago.
So my name is Hamilton Glass. I am an artist here in Richmond, Virginia.
I am Sandra Sellars, and I am a photojournalist here in Richmond.
I'm Sandy Williams IV. I'm an artist, filmmaker, living right now in Richmond, but I'm from Virginia Beach, Virginia.
My name is Princess Blandon. I am the co-founder of Justice and Reformation, and I am the very proud sister of the late Marcus David Peters.
My great-grandparents, they were being born. They were born in 1886, 1887. They came to Brooklyn, New York from Dinwiddie, Virginia, and Pocahontas Island. And they came and started, I guess, incorporating the spiritual culture that we had, doing like root work. It was called just that work. It was really just called that work. And it's taking care of your family by imagining the world that you wish to see collectively.
Because you can't make anything monumental unless you see the details. And sometimes if you slow down and you pay attention to the details, you're able to honor those details. You're able to see a certain poetry in those details. You're able to see those people that you once considered peripheral to your society, those voices that you once considered to be incidental to the grand narrative, and you're able to say, this is monumental. Even in its smallness, there's something there.
It's like one of these artworks that you just kind of need to look at one more time. You always find this new thing to look at, right? It's like, am I looking at the shoes? Am I looking at the hair? Am I looking at the ripped pants? The stands? What is the horse doing? What is the base made out of? Like, come and knock it, let me touch it. Like, there's like so much things that you can always look at and feel.
Of how Rumors of War has changed between when it was first installed and now that, the Confederate monuments are coming down. For one, it no longer has that like echo of the Jeb Stuart monument because they're pretty identical except for the person that sits on top of the horse. But now that the Jeb Stuart is gone, it suddenly becomes a more unique monument in the Richmond landscape. It's one of the only equestrian sculptures that didn't get tagged by all of the protesters. I think it's interesting the way in which he's interested in inserting different bodies into these usually very white spaces. It's inspiring the way his work inspires people. Even if I don't necessarily need a monument of myself.
That statue is every Black person, men, women, young, old. Monuments are, a position of power, and to see something like that, that's a reflection of you, it's powerful.
High profile advancement for Black imagery in the public art world and in the streetscape.
For Richmond, kind of is like the first step of the rejection to the older monuments. It's saying we are progressive and we are moving past this.
What is the way that we do that? What is the spectacle that we need to create, or what is the artwork that we need to create in order to be seen? My views on the power of art, if I think about activism, I think that's a move. Here is this monument of a Black man in Nikes and ripped pants. The same way that there can be this monument, there can be many of different ways that these things can be represented. Just like the same way that Kehinde makes his paintings, that's another move that I I need to make sure that somebody sees this.
It's a very similar sort of agency, finding where the boundaries are and placing yourself beyond those boundaries, regardless of how it might make people feel. Who wants to tell you that you can't do those things?
And what I've done in my work and what I've done throughout my entire career has been to take an ancient and respected language and to try to find people who happen to look like me and put them in that context.
Without a doubt, one of the most impactful works that I've helped to acquire at the museum. Well, I hope that it is a space where they see themselves reflected. There was a father who had called in and he was saying how he had 2 teenage sons and they were Indigenous Americans, said that, when he told his sons, hey, let's go for a ride, let's go and see the sculpture, they were really like, seriously? We're going in a car to see a sculpture? Like, we cannot be further interested. I mean, there's no interest here whatsoever. He said the minute he drove by, they sort of looked and went like, what? And then when they parked, he said he could not even pry them away. They were just so blown away by the fact that it was not someone of a bygone era. This sculpture was someone who is of the moment.
Rumors of War, I was, like everyone else I know in Richmond, I was so excited about it. I mean, not only is it a statue, it's a Kehinde Wiley statue, and it's a large monumental piece that was, addressing the issues that have gone on unaddressed in our city for so long. And I certainly think you can see the reaction. Some people hate Rumors of War and they don't have any good reason to hate it. They just hate it because they know it took this thing that they cherish and then they turned it on its head. That's what art's supposed to do. It's supposed to be provocative. It's supposed to take a chance.
I definitely see a contrast in Richmond's history now that Rumors of War is here, right on time as it coming right before 2020. It says a lot that Confederate monuments on Monument Avenue are this target of unheard voices, as where Rumors of War is this beacon of hope. It shows how powerful it was for Richmond. It was very encouraged to see how many people stood behind it and how many people championed it.
What's happening now is something that I never thought I would see happen. I mean, I've covered protests before. People have always protested the fact that they're there. I've never seen it to this extent and for this long.
When I think about Rumors of War, I think about, where we started off at. I think about, even the Emancipation Proclamation, and how even when we felt that progress was being made, we still had people in Texas who didn't even know. To me, it brings me down memory lane of just our history, of where we began and where we are now, and understanding that even our ability to vote, which this recent election was really, really important. And still we have people who decide not to. A time lapse of where we were and where we are now, and then the understanding of how much progress we still need to make.
There's a term in Ghana called Sankofa, and it means that it's never too late to go back into the past and get the stuff that is best for us today.
What do we do with the relics of the past? Do we keep them up? Do we take them down? Kehinde just sort of came with a very different perspective, which is why not respond to them with the same sort of monumentality as the sculptures themselves.
So not only are the local and state governments bringing them down, but the people are bringing them down. They took down Columbus. They took down one of the Confederate statues on the grounds of VCU. People are just fed up.
I guess it's going to be the only ones still standing at the end. That becomes significant too. And is a way of signaling, like what values the community wants to project and what things it wants to take down or reject.
Not everyone will have an opportunity to get to the Marcus David Peters Circle before that monument comes down. So by the time they get there, it's going to look different, right? But museums have an opportunity to kind of take a picture of, or to take like a time capsule of what happened during this time and be able to share it with people for hundreds of years to come. I meet a lot of videographers and photographers and people were jumping out of the woodworks who are doing documentaries, but everyone understands that what has happened, there's so many stories to tell. And what we see is that oftentimes mainstream media, they become part of the problem. They tell the narrative that normally hits nationwide that the people in power, want to be shared, and so it's a very biased narrative, but to be able to get accurate artifacts and accounts of things that took place, during a given point of time, and right now we're talking about the uprise, then that's going to be very, very valuable because I won't be here forever, right?
We need to preserve our own stories, and we are our own best history. The other step in the other direction is tactical urbanism, and that means making people have access to the tools to tell their own stories and to be compensated appropriately.
Rumors of war is kind of like a global phenomena. Kehinde, I think, holds that celebrity for sure. His work shows all around the world, but it's also because he's playing with symbols that are recognized and ubiquitous all over the world. The Renaissance painting, the equestrian sculpture, a timeless fascination of European heritage that is such a part of American history.
And when I came here all those years back and I saw Monument Avenue and I saw some extraordinary sculpture, people took a lot of time to make something powerful, beautiful, elegant, and innocent.
There are a lot of things that are done in an old-fashioned way, and being this city that's between like this progressive up north and down south, the needle constantly is trying to be pushed and moved here.
Thinking about Virginia is where the first slaves were brought into the US.
And then looking at Richmond, we're talking about the capital of the Confederacy. There's a lot of just still deeply rooted. A lot of people like to say, well, that was past. Let's put that in the past. Well, we're still dealing with it today. If you look at where the Robert E. Lee Monument stands, where it's now called the Marcus David Peters Circle, as liberated by the people for the people, that was an area in itself that Black people were not welcomed in, up until the uprise, so we're not talking, 50 years ago, we're talking about up until the uprise, that was an area where Black Virginians did not feel welcomed and did not feel comfortable, and those monuments just staying perched up on their base, was a clear reminder of that.
Before the summer's events, I think Monument Avenue was a place for viewing. It was a place for stature, if you will. What's happened now, because of the civil unrest, people are finally getting the courage to kind of say, hey, these are not my monuments. These are not what I want representing me. This is not how we should be representing ourselves as a city. We are beyond this capital of Confederacy. We are beyond lifting up these racist symbols.
Just kind of like this interesting parallel with what is happening in Richmond and many places across the world where monuments are coming down. Kind of like for me, that's an interesting thing to do, because I think my stance when it comes to monuments, just in general, is like there should be no monuments at all. Like I think we should like just find better ways to explain history rather than making it into a location or trying to explain through material, right? It's like if we think about revisionist history, how do we put it in curriculum in schools? How do we include the Black experience into it?
And I want to make sure that there's very innovative tools for memory keepers in the world to be able to use so that they can get their work out. And it doesn't cost them a lot to do it, because it's not always going to be someone who can say, okay, here's $5,000 to talk to us today, So that shouldn't negate their work. And that's the reason why I really like to consider other ways than Gilded Age statuary and iron and marble and stuff to be able to commemorate things in our culture. I would love to see it as a launch point of further exploration in the materials that are considered to be fine art. I just feel like they are not the only step.
We've been, projecting on the Robert E. Lee Monument, which has kind of turned into Marcus David Peters Circle as part of the Black Lives Matter movement and protest in Richmond. The monument had, started transforming in the early days of the protests with lots of kind of markings on it. People started really using it as a meeting place of the movement in general. After we had basically witnessed a lot of tear gassing one day in a public park, and we decided that we really wanted to get out there and make a bigger impact, just being present. We kind of got a generator and went out to the circle and plopped up a projected on the monument. The first night we projected George Floyd's face and No Justice, No Peace and BLM up on the horse.
People focused on what was happening at Marcus David Peters Circle in the news media, and all too often, they just tell the police side of the story or don't talk to the activists. And historical nature of the monument itself naturally lent itself to juxtaposing it with the other half of that history that it represents. And so we started putting up images of early leaders of the abolitionist and civil rights movement, like Harriet Tubman, Frederick Douglass, later leaders like W.B. Du Bois and Richmond's own Maggie Walker. And I think bringing that sort of energy and using the power and the historical narrative of the monument against itself really kind of broke the project open.
Because art should be a conversation. Rumors of War was amazing because of its intent, but also because of the city's reaction to it.
I'm scouring history constantly, trying to find a little something that's been neglected. Sometimes it's beautiful, oftentimes it's terrible. I think this one's kind of bittersweet. This one is the coming together of two different streams in our urge as human beings. One is to destroy, and one is to create. The destruction is clear. Equestrian sculpture is about people getting up on horses and oftentimes holding swords and feeling very dominant over those who are not on that horse. We can use this as a symbol for power in all of its forms, whether it be state military power or interpersonal power within relationships. Power wielded correctly can be a thing of beauty.
He really could foresee shifts and changes that we as mere mortals couldn't quite imagine. And it was a way to have such an elegant call and response to Monument Avenue. It was such a beautiful way to say, who cares if they stay up? Who cares if they go down? The reality is we have to match histories with other histories, with evolving histories, with our history of the moment, especially now when you see the youth on the front line of a lot of protests, a lot of the Black Lives movement, a lot of the trans and rights movements. All of these things are dovetailing on the front lines of equity and social, equity and change. I've seen groups of young kids coming to photograph themselves in front of the sculpture. I've seen people of every cultural background there to see that monument and to photograph themselves in front of it. I think it just speaks to so many people.
Artists have the talent or the goal or the objective to create images of things that they don't see in the world. I think that's the way I feel about my role, finding ways to visualize that change for people. And then from that sort of like visualization, it trickles into the social conscience of community in ways that are impossible to quantify or qualify.
Keep on creating symbols that are worth lasting around and, upholding values that, support everyone. And I think that statue absolutely does. I think a lot of people maybe didn't necessarily see the Confederate statues as hateful symbols before, and maybe now see them as that. Art's constantly changing. The more we listen and understand each other, the more we realize why certain symbols are offensive or beautiful or, worth preserving or not.
Just kind of a part of protest art to us, the people, on the ground, just people expressing their rage, their feelings, their hurt, how that has traveled around the world. When things get attention, it starts making waves, and it brings about change, So even the visual optics, of some of the art, the murals, the projections on the Robert E. Lee monument, it has traveled all around the world, and it has so much strength behind it. It's kind of like when you hear people say that a picture is worth 1,000 words, again, the art speaks great volume, but at one point you even saw it all throughout the city, whether people liked it or not.
History repeating itself is a deliberate act that you can actually choose to be inspired by the things that you are led to, and just keep someone else's work going if you feel connected to it. And that's how it ends up being such a long legacy of resistance that you can be a part of.
I've met and seen all types of people from all walks of life, mostly young people, but a lot of older people from every ethnicity, people who are students, people who take days off from work to go out and protest. The people is the primary theme in my work.
really pleased that the New York Times sort of ranking was about the community, because I very much see what's happening out there as a community form of art. I mean, every day we've been collaborating with the people who are doing the graffiti on the monument. You know, what we do changes every day based on what the words that come in and out of that space. You know, one day, about a month and a half into it, a giant golden bold letter war just appeared on it. And all of a sudden you have to work around that. Just says war, super huge. And that changed the tone of everything you put on it. You know, then one day the word breathe just showed up, maybe a really big swear word. This is something Richmond as a community has done with each other. What we do, you know, is highly visible. And I think that's why we get the attention we get. The canvas that we've been working on is so loaded with meaning that like the smallest act of subversion just like is magnified by it.
This time is different because this movement is not just Black people. This movement is not just poor people. This movement is not just uneducated people. There are doctors, there are lawyers, there are barbers, there are housewives, there are teachers, you know, there are new college grads and high school grads that understand that we have a problem here in America.
Youngins are going to really be the hustle behind any freedom movement, especially Black freedom movement in Richmond or anywhere else.
There are a lot of people who need a lot of things right now. If we just ignore that and worry about our own situations, then nothing's really going to happen. We need to really kind of fuel empathy and connection and find a way to kind of not just throw money at things, but listen to the deficits a lot of these communities are having. I wanted to find a way to kind of emulate what I believe society needed to do. As an artist, collaborating with another artist is a tough thing to do. You kind of have to do that connection and empathy thing. You have to leave space for another person to kind of create and act, especially Richmond being a very public art heavy place. If we could get together artists from different backgrounds and get them to have these conversations around social justice and racial justice and get them to create murals that spoke to that empathy and connection I was just talking about, emulate what we need to be doing as people, come together and create art that just talks about healing and also furthering the conversations that we need to have.
Positive energy attracts more positive energy, and positive people attract more positive people. And when you're positive about things, creativity seems to flow much more naturally. And the things that you all do together and make, and the way that you see the world and the things that you leave in the world are what other people on the outside looking in sometimes call art. But really, it's just us being in the same space together and living our lives the best we can and as good as we can.
The only way to move forward is that we do it all together, right? And thinking about how can we all be seen? How can we all be here and bring our full selves?
But I think it always comes out better that way when I just get up here and I deal with the fact that I'm nervous and overwhelmed by not just the amount of people, but the sheer history that we're dealing with here.
All right.
This is consequential on a scale that goes beyond museum walls. It's about how we choose to give birth to the next group of people who are then going to take that as their clarion call to what we mean as a society. Ladies and gentlemen, rumors of war.